I have seen so much love for the latest episode of the Book of Boba Fett, Return of the Mandalorian. It's been a blast, and I love it to death as well. I had a giant smile on my face the entire time I was watching it. But I have seen one criticism popping up over and over. It's usually something along the lines of how the best episode of the Book of Boba Fett doesn't have Boba Fett in it. What does that say about the character and the series? Why was this story about Djarin included in a series about Boba Fett? I had those questions watching the episode too, but as I wrote my initial review video, I pretty quickly saw how similar Din's current situation is to Boba Fett's. The series is called The Book of Boba Fett, and books or plays or other types of stories can have interludes. Interludes are breaks from the main plot to insert a separate but still thematically relevant story into the narrative. For some Star Wars examples, the Aftermath trilogy of books by Chuck Wendig has several interludes that tell us what's going on across the galaxy in the wake of the Battle of Endor. Cobb Vanth was introduced in 3 interludes across those 3 books that told us how he got Boba Fett's armor and what he did with it. The Ahsoka novel by E.K. Johnston has an interlude about Obi-Wan Kenobi and what he was up to a year after Order 66. I've never seen someone read a book with an interlude in it and then go, but why did they do that? Because when you finish the book, you've got the entire picture. So Chapter 5 of the Book of Boba Fett, to me, is an interlude about Din Djarin. Honestly, I think it would have been fun if the writers had swapped out the chapter numbers for this episode and just written interlude instead. I do admit that it's a little more frustrating watching an interlude as part of a weekly series rather than reading one, and then being able to immediately jump into the next chapter. As much as I personally loved the episode, I do wish we had at least seen Boba Fett and maybe gotten a hint of his plans for the final 2 episodes. But Din's story is still completely connected to the themes being explored by the Book of Boba Fett. And honestly, the opposite is true as well. The Book of Boba Fett is kind of an interlude to the main plot of The Mandalorian. The 2 series have been strongly connected from the beginning. If Boba Fett comes into The Mandalorian, fans are gonna want to know how he survived and what he's been up to for 5 years. That's a story worth telling. But how can it be told in such a way that also serves the larger narrative of The Mandalorian and these various spin-off shows that are building into a climactic event? Well, the writers can give Din a role model. I've been guessing since Chapter 4 of The Mandalorian that Din would eventually retire from bounty hunting. We saw him take up a greater purpose for a while with Grogu, and making sure he was safely delivered to Luke. He's finished that quest, and now he's back to bounty hunting. But he's not the same person he was. Grogu changed him. He lost his ship, and he got the Darksaber, which is the symbol of a new quest and a greater purpose. But it's one he's not ready for. It's a power he doesn't know how to wield or even want to wield. He is straight up misusing this important symbol to hunt bounties, and doing so results in him literally burning himself with it. We've seen over and over again in all kinds of Star Wars stories that the life of bounty hunting leads to destruction. Even the best of the best can wind up dead. Jango Fett is proof of that. Boba Fett had a near-death experience. From the start of The Mandalorian, we've seen Din find himself struggling or covered in mud. The life of bounty hunting is a dirty one. His armor losing its integrity is a not very subtle metaphor for his own integrity, and then he gets a new set, a clean slate, a chance to be better. For a while, Grogu represented that chance, but now he's gone. Without that moral compass, Din goes right back to a profession that is beneath him. But his return to his old covert shows us that it's not going to work out. As he trains with the Darksaber, he comments on how it gets heavier with every swing. Again, that's not very subtle. The weight of the blade represents the weight of the responsibility that comes with it, the weight of uniting and leading the Mandalorian people if he chooses to do so. It's also connected to what Kanan Jarrus teaches Sabine Wren about the Darksaber and lightsabers in general in Star Wars Rebels. Kanan tells her she's not fighting with a blade so much as she is directing a current of power. Her thoughts and actions become energy that flows through the crystal and becomes part of the blade. Din's inability to effectively wield the Darksaber is a manifestation of his hesitance at leaving his comfort zone of bounty hunting to become something greater. But after his duel with Paz Vizsla, he realizes that he doesn't quite fit in his comfort zone anymore. His covert is the closest thing he has to a family at this point, and he's rejected by them because he removed his helmet for 2 very important reasons. First, to save Grogu on Morak. Second, to look at Grogu with his own eyes, to let his son see his face. and we as the audience all know that was the right and good choice to make. I think Din does too. I don't think he's walking away from the armorer going, "Stupid Grogu, I never should have taken my helmet off." I don't think he has any regrets, and even though it probably hurts, he is continuing to veer off his once sacred way of living. So then he goes to Tatooine, and that's where he refurbishes the N1 starfighter with Peli. But that takes some convincing because he insists multiple times that he wants a Razor Crest. He wants the familiar ship, the one with a cargo hold with enough room to carry as many bounties as he wants. The Razor Crest represents the life he used to have, but the N1 represents the life he could have. He and Peli take something old and beat up and they make it better, faster, to Din's specifications. We don't really know how much choice Din had growing up. He was rescued by a cult at a young age and raised by them to follow their ways. Now he's got some freedom. He makes the ship or life that he wants for a future that he envisions. It's even got a little spot for Grogu. Sure, it's an N1 at its core, but it's his. There is no other N1 like it. And yes, Din is a Mandalorian at his core, but that doesn't mean he can't make his life his, or that he can't make a creed of his own. He takes the ship out for a spin, and it's a little rocky at first. The engine doesn't turn over right away. Din worries that they should run a diagnostic. He's still hesitant about fully accepting this new ship, which probably feels to him like leaving bounty hunting behind, leaving what he knows behind in favor of the unknown. It's change, and change can be scary, but he goes for it anyway thanks to his friend's encouragement. He complains that it handles a little bumpy at first, and Peli says it's because he's flying it like a gunship instead of a starfighter. Again, he has to embrace the new, embrace the change, and once he does, he has the time of his life. He accepts the new ship for what it is, stops worrying, and pushes it as fast as it can go. When he gets back to the garage, he says the flight was wizard. Yes, that's a fun callback, but I also think it can mean that the flight made him feel like a kid again. The most famous use of that word was way back in The Phantom Menace. I like to think the use of wizard was more common back then, when Din was a child, and that's why he is saying it again as an adult. So, in the middle of the Book of Boba Fett, we've got an interlude about another Mandalorian learning to embrace change. He's heading towards a path of reinventing himself where one day he might stop working as a bounty hunter, he might stop serving this cult that tells him how to live and what rules to follow. Instead, he might take up the Darksaber for its true purpose. He could become a leader, the Mandalore, and he could reinvent all Mandalorians for the better. And wouldn't you know it, he's about to meet back up with Boba Fett, who is doing something awfully similar. He's a bounty hunter who's tired of working for scugholes, who has the drive to become a leader even if he doesn't fully know how to do it. He wants to reinvent himself badly enough that he's willing to overcome every obstacle in his way. In Chapter 4, Boba Fett sends his bantha away, saying he'll either get his ship back or he'll die trying. That's the sound of a man who knows what he wants and will not hesitate to go for it. He sends away the bantha, a symbol of his life with the Tuskens, in favor of his old ship, a symbol of both his past and his potential future. And I've said plenty about Boba Fett and his own potential regression in previous videos. He made a life for himself with the Tuskens. Similar to Din, it was a life he got to choose for the first time. He inherited his armor, but he made the gaffy stick. And now we're seeing Boba Fett maybe going back to who he was before the Tuskens. So I think Din and Boba could help each other. Boba could be the example Din needs to see to fulfill his own destiny. He can see the successful reinvention of a bounty hunter into a leader. And not just any bounty hunter, the quintessential Star Wars bounty hunter. If Boba Fett can have the courage to face his fears and, ride a Rancor, if Boba Fett can change himself, so can Din. And maybe both characters can help themselves fully embrace their futures without clinging to their past. I totally understand why people are frustrated or disappointed by Boba Fett's absence from this episode, but I also think when we get to the end of the season, it won't be a big sticking point. And I think interludes like this might become more common as we have The Mandalorian, The Book of Boba Fett, Ahsoka, and probably more series building towards whatever this climactic event is. These series are all part of a larger story, so there's probably going to be a lot of crossover. I'll definitely revisit the structure of this season and the inclusion of this Mandalorian-centric episode when I review the entire thing, but I never had a problem viewing this episode as a separate but still very much thematically connected part of the story of Boba Fett and Din Djarin. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments. If you haven't already, please like this video, subscribe to the channel to keep up with all our Book of Boba Fett coverage, and consider checking out our Patreon page for even more. We're releasing video reactions and audio commentaries for every episode as they come out. As always, thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you.